Welcome to Illuminating Haze, a podcast devoted to bringing light to the dark haze as you navigate college as a social science major or a student going into emergency services or other helping profession. University of Miami student Isabella and criminologist Dr. Kara Hill discuss topics in the areas of academics, career, and mental health. This podcast is brought to you in partnership with Riptide Resiliency and Empowerment Center, a nonprofit devoted to supporting those going into or currently in or retired from emergency services and the helping professions. Let's join them now.
Hi, Isabella Perkinson. I am a student at the University of Miami. I'm currently a senior and I study criminology.
That's a good choice.
Yeah.
And I'm Dr. Kara Hill. I teach part-time at University of Miami, but currently run a nonprofit called Riptide Resiliency and Empowerment Center, which we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah. So the reason why we decided that we should have this podcast and decided to start it was as a junior year, I came up to my professor, who's Kara Hill, and I told her simply listen, I'm a really good student, but I have no idea what to do once I'm done studying. I don't know career paths. I don't know how to get internships, who to talk to. I don't have any contacts with anyone. And overall, I was lost. And she gave me an opportunity. But I think it was important to touch on this because I feel like not many people talk about what it's like to be a student and have no one to reach out to, and then just feeling lost and be like, I don't know what to do. So hopefully this podcast can help you because, you're not alone. I was there and I found someone. So you can definitely find someone in 4 years. It took me 3, but I did it. So I think, it's important to have this conversation.
Yeah, totally. So several, different reasons as to why it's important. So one is, as Isabella is saying, is it's super, it's super important because as a student, there's all these different departments you can go to, but it's still hard knowing okay, where exactly do I go? And in my 28 years in higher ed, that's what I hear a lot is students don't know where to go, even though you have all these resources, right? Because even figuring out what resource to go to, part of that is the struggle. And so when you came to me, one of the coolest things was that she was interested in doing an internship. And so Isabella's been doing an internship with us at Riptide Resiliency and Empowerment Center. And what we do is we help those going into currently in or retired from the helping professions or emergency services, which a lot of those encompass social science majors, right? People that want to go into law enforcement, fire, public safety, et cetera. And we help to prepare you mentally. And that's a big part of even seeking out those resources that, students, and rightfully so, you're anxious, not only just because of society and because of what you're navigating, but as you get closer to graduating, that anxiety increases. And I think one thing that we know and that we've talked about is that often part of finding that occupation is that you only know what you've learned in school, right? You don't know the reality of where you're going. And so that makes it a little bit more difficult because you're not really sure exactly is what you like or what you don't like. 46% of college students change their major at least once, with the average being 3 times within their college career, which makes sense. And then you graduate and you're like, okay, now what do I do? But getting prepared to that point is super difficult. And so bridging that gap between academia and reality is really where we're going. And really one of the primary purposes of this podcast. Yeah. So tell us about yourself, Isabella.
Okay. So like I said, I'm a student at the University of Miami and I major in criminology and I have a minor in sociology as well. Mostly I got into it because it was always just very interesting to me knowing the human behavior, why people are motivated to do what they do. Also coming from my country, which I'm originally from Venezuela, a lot of crime, how to get out of there. So it was what leads people to do this? How does it affect them? And just really learning about it and tying it back to society and how everything is interconnected. And there's not just one reason why people do everything. There's various things that go into it. So I've always been super, super interested in learning about that. And I got into the University of Miami, where I study that now. How I mentioned before a little, I've really excelled academically always in my college career more than I did in high school, but I was just mostly because I was interested in the topic. I was like, I'm into this, like, I'm gonna learn. And then I kept getting straight A's, like, I had good grades, and I was like, okay, well, yeah, like, I have all this knowledge. What do I do with it? Like, where do I go? So that's when I went and I seeked out help. But that's kind of my academic background, my career so far. And now I'm interning, so that's really fun.
And you're just trying to figure out kind of where you're going to go from here, right? So that's the
Yeah.
difficult part too. Like you did a good job of figuring out like why your major, and that's a tough part, and that's important for students to think about right now. Like, why did you pick the major that you picked? Because, and you know this, I've said it multiple times, if you're not super passionate about where you're going, that is really difficult. And if you're 3 or 4 years into college, now you have all this anxiety because you're like, well, I need to change my major. Like, I am not interested in this. And that's what I love about this podcast is we're going to expose some of those things that you need to be considering to be able to figure out, are you in that major because that's where you started and you feel like, oh, I've already spent all this money and this time, I have to stay here? Or are you there because you're passionate, right? And that passion is super important, which obviously has led you to where you are. Ironically, I had no idea what I was going to do when I went to college. Shocker. And
Yeah.
I actually failed out of college my first time out of community college. I love it. I love telling students that. Isabella, you probably heard that before.
Yeah.
I hated college. And when I look back now, I mean, I was 18, you know, and I just had gone to a community college and I thought, I didn't know what I was going to do. But I hated college. And I think it was a statistics course, which is so funny because I'm a researcher, right? But at the time I was like, oh, this sucks. Like, I don't want to do this. So it wasn't until years later when I had done volunteering with a police department in Virginia, a small police department in Virginia, and had really got enmeshed into law enforcement when I really started realizing, man, this is what I really like. So I actually thought I was going to be an attorney. Went through the long process of studying and taking my LSAT and applying to law schools and getting into law schools. And then I was like, like I do not want to interpret the law. Like that's not what I want to do. But what I started to realize through my experience as volunteering in law enforcement and then looking at different college options, and granted, I was older by this time, I was like 25, 24, right? I realized that it wasn't the law side of things that I really liked. It was trying to figure out why people do what they do. Like it amazed me, the things that people do. And I don't necessarily want to be a police officer, although I had a very ripe heart for police officers because we forget that they're human. And we'll talk about that another day, right? The things that you go through. But I really was like, you know what? I want to figure out why people do what they do. And my point in doing that is to um, really bring equality in treatment to people who have a bad day and make bad mistakes. As a critical criminologist, I'm all about equality and evening out that playing field, whether it's through policies, sentencing policies, whether it's through law, whatever. Like that's where my heart was, is figuring out why people did they do what they do, and then coming up with a way to influence people academically to try to take a more fair approach to how we treat criminals, really, right? So criminology, obviously being the crime of criminal behavior. Um, I really got interested in the practitioner part of criminology. So looking at those that work in the criminal justice system, looking at how they handle people, looking at the stress and stuff that they deal with, and figuring out how can we as academics help them to be better. Because if the person that is on the field, if you want, or if you want to say it that way, that are in the field of police officers, attorneys, probation officers, you know, whoever is in the field, if we can figure out a way to make their lives easier and have more bright line cut policies, that reduces inequality, when it comes to sentencing, when it comes to arresting, whatever the case may be. And so that really led me down a line of finding a job outside of a research institution, which that's where I came from, Old Dominion University. And I was an academic through and through, but I felt that I really needed to bring the practitioner part to education. And so I ended up at a university in Denver for 10 years as the chair. And I built an experiential criminal justice program to where our students literally were in the field all the time through volunteering, through community services, through guest speakers, implemented into their curriculum. And along with that was building mental health care plans, which I think that's lacking in higher ed. I say that like that's a major problem if you're going into the social sciences, which trust me, we'll talk about this as the podcast goes on over the next couple of weeks. But you're not prepared for what you're going to read if you're going to stay in academia, if you're the data that you're going to collect as an academic and or going into the field where you're not prepared mentally. And that's super important. And so those passions really led me to become a professor that really brings it real. And I think that's probably why we connected, Isabella, is that I was a different professor, right? Like somebody that came and was like, listen, like, here's the reality. Like, we can read this, but here's the reality. And this is how it affects this. And I think that that's super important. And I think it helps college students, hopefully, to figure out a little bit more where their interest lies. Because what's on paper and what you're reading is way different than the practitioner side of things and the reality. And that goes from picking majors all the way to being a professional. We can talk about that in several different realms. So that's kind of how I ended up where I ended up. My heart, of course, was really doing taking care of those who are going into the field, those who are in the field, those who are retired from the field, because crime and criminals really affect them for your whole entire career. You'll never be the same. Once you step foot out, or once you are a researcher and you're researching, let's say you're really interested in helping childhood victims, every day you're going to be reading horrible things. You're going to be hearing horrible things. You're going to be collecting a lot of qualitative data that is going to shock your system. And so I think that there's a call to help prepare students more for that reality part and to bridge that academic part with reality, so that you are making more informed decisions and hopefully getting into a career that you are a little bit more prepared for.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up here. So do you want to talk a little bit more just kind of about what we're trying to do? I think I kind of talked about that. I'll just say it. So we're just really trying to bridge that gap. But how do you think that helps you as a student, or what is your interest in that? Because you're super interested in bridging that gap. This is really your baby,
Yeah. I was also really interested in having the two perspectives. That's why I said, like, start with us, of me being a student and you being someone that already went through it. And like you said, like, it wasn't easy. It wasn't a direct path of like, okay, now I'm doing this, now I'm doing this, now I'm doing this. So I think that's very important, just because for me, mostly as a criminologist, like someone who studies that, I didn't have those connections that I see my friends that in business have, whose parents are also in business, and they have friends of friends who are in business and they get the internship. So it was just like those tips, that advice, and also just the connecting of, yeah, you are who you are today. Like this great professor, you have your nonprofit, but it wasn't always like that. And it's like, okay, like I'm okay, I'm doing good. Like I don't have to have this certain path that's like direct forward and I have everything figured out already. I'm just kind of like, I don't know. And I feel also what happens a lot with the social sciences is that people say it as a good thing, but sometimes that can be scary. That it's like, well, there's plenty of things that you can go into. It's a huge field. And it's like, well, yeah, that's my problem sometimes
Right.
too. Like,
Too many
there's
choices.
so
Yeah.
much. There's so much that I'm like, so what do I do with all of it? And
Yeah.
it's like, people say it as a good thing, and it is, because if you don't like a certain aspect of it, you can go into another realm. But it's also that idea of like, nothing's like straightforward for anyone in these professions, or like going into the helping professions. Like you mentioned to me before, you could be a sociologist and work in HR. Why, like, then major in HR, like things like that, that it's like, it's such a wide area. And for me, it was so easy to be like, I don't know who to talk to, I don't know who to reach out to. And it happened a lot where my professors, I had previous professors, and they were researchers. Like I didn't have a professor that worked in the field. And it's like, I personally, it's not research. Like that's not what I'm super interested in. So it was like, well, I can talk to professors, but they've only ever been researchers. And I know that one thing I'm not that interested in. Like,
Yeah.
I could work with it, but it's not
Yeah.
my main. So I think just having this and being able to talk to you, like, also not in like a super professional way, like just being able to be like, listen, I am so lost right now. Like,
Yeah.
please
Yeah.
help me. I think that's super important. And it also shows like you can have these type of relationships with your professors. Like, of the 4 years that you're there, I promise you one of them like is willing to help you with whatever. And I think that's just really important. And also just because you know so many people, there's so many different stories that you can bring from other perspectives. Because it happens like, maybe I see you and you're like, oh, he said, look, I do this. If you don't like it, there's also this person that did this, and you can
Hmm.
talk to them. So it's building that like web of people
Yes.
in the field that was so hard for me to find because I
Hmm.
generally knew no one. And
Hmm.
I wasn't the most talkative in my classes, like,
Hmm.
didn't make that many friends. So I was like, I'm so lost. So I think this is really important. And I really, like, I think it could help a lot. To
Totally. And I
even
think,
just,
yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say to like, even just, if it helps someone just open up to a professor, do it. Like, do it.
Yeah. And I will say, obviously I've been a professor for a long time and I've had thousands of students. And Lisa, I've told you like maybe 10 or 15, like I like came to me straight up, like, hey, I like in your position, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. And one thing I think if you take anything from today, it's taken away that professors are there to help you. Right. And if they're not willing to help you, then you need to go ask somebody else.
Mm.
I always laugh in class, and I'm sure you've heard me say this. He said that I'm like, you pay me. I mean, really, you pay me, right? Because you go to that university and you should take advantage of professors. We do have a wealth of knowledge for you. We do have more experience and, we do have those networks that are really important. And if you are a good student and you show effort, let me clarify that, right? You can't like do nothing all semester and then expect a professor to put their name on you, which I want to talk about that for a second. But it's actually a very good thing. So whether you're staying in the academic side or whether you want to go practitioner side, making that connection is important. And we do want to help you. Um, and I think it's really important for students to realize that those connections can only be made if you do your part, because literally you are that professor's name. And that's really important to us as professors, that who we put out there, because of networks and the importance of who you know, and because of the connections that we have, unfortunately, I cannot refer a student to someone for an internship that I know never showed up to class.
Yeah.
Because what is the chance that student's going to show up for an internship, right? So then every other student that I'd be like, oh, you should do an internship at this site, that student's no longer going to be able to get that internship because the student that didn't show up kind of ruined it for him.
Yeah.
I used to tell students at my university in Denver, like literally, if you mess up in that, you're messing it up for every student that comes behind you.
Yeah.
And so it is really important that, you talk to your professors, tell them what you need. And it's okay if you don't know exactly what it is that you need. I think that's how you came to me. I've had several students that came to me that way. I think 3 just out of Miami in the fall that are like, I don't even know the questions to ask, but what I do know is I have no idea.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because I can help you, professors can help you kind of thresh that out. So I think that's super important. And that's why I love what we're going to do with this podcast. We're going to provide education information, right, regarding
Yeah.
topics in college, selecting things, thinking about your major, career stuff. We're going to talk about mental health in our podcast, mental health of being a student, mental health of going into these professions and maintaining within those professions. And then we're going to provide tips. Every week, we're going to have some type of tip. And we've already kind of given away our tip for today. What was our tip for today, Isabella? Our
Well,
tip for today is,
I just go ask the no. You're like, any response that you get, it's gonna be better than a no or not having a response at all. For me personally, my mom always told me like, you already have the no. If you don't ask, that's basically having a no. So just go ask. And if the professor tells you no, which I highly doubt any professor is not
no.
gonna be willing to help you, then whatever. You tried. You went out of your way and you did something. And I think it's also really important what I've seen with my professors. Genuinely, they want to help you. They get excited when you come up to them and you're like, listen, I need guidance. I need help. Like, they're there for a reason. They're teaching for a reason. Most of them, they want to help you and they
Yeah.
want to see you succeed. But also, how you mentioned before, like, you can't just go ask for help without having done anything until the last day of the semester and be like, please help. No, it doesn't work
Yes.
like that either. Like, put in your part, but always
Mhm.
ask.
Mhm.
And that's so important, to just go out of your way. If you're nervous, whatever. I was nervous. I was gonna be like, what is she gonna say to me? Maybe she's gonna be like, why are you lost? But
What
you
is
didn't.
wrong
It
with
was like,
you? Just kidding.
yeah, like, why don't you have everything figured out?
You should
No.
have this all put together.
Yeah, and it's also very important, like, to reach out to those that have already been through it. Because you see
Absolutely.
your professor and you might think, like, oh, he already made it. Like, I don't know how. Trust me, it probably wasn't that easy. It
That's right.
probably wasn't, like, at the end of the day, everyone goes through something, and you don't know how much you can relate to a professor. Like, really, it's just ask.
Yep.
Ask for help.
100% agree. And I think that's good. Like you have a student telling you, right? Like you need to ask, and you have me as a professor telling you, you just need to ask. And I think too, for those of you that are like, well, I've jacked up in my college career. And so if I went to my professor, somebody's listening to this and is like, well, I can't go to my professors because I was one that didn't show up to class, or I didn't really get to know my professor. You know what? We want to help in those circumstances too. And there's been many times, where I've had to tell students, listen, like, I can't help you get an internship yet because of these issues, but can I help you with your time management? Like, we have a skill set because we were students forever. I mean, oh my gosh, by the time, if you go like, if I count my associate's degree, that's like what, 2 years, your bachelor's at 4, master's at 2, PhD at 3 of just coursework, and then another, what, 7 years, 6 years, 5 years, whatever it was to do my dissertation. I mean, I was a student in college forever, and I didn't do well all the time, and I struggled, and I needed to connect with professors. I mean, how was I going to get anywhere, right? Because that field's competitive too, going as an academic and wanting to teach. So I think that like sometimes students are scared to come, and I may not recommend you right away, truth be
Yeah.
told, and your professor may not. But to your point, Isa, it doesn't mean that we don't want to help, right? So I can tell you how many times I've helped students like, I'm happy to help and I would love to help you, look for an internship or a job or whatever. But first, we got to work on time management, because you don't turn your assignments in on time. You don't come to class on time, and I've had students where literally I've helped them set up schedules that work for them, and they've never had anybody do that for them. And
Yeah.
once they saw the schedule and figured out, like, how do I break down my readings? How do I break down my assignments so I'm not cramming the night before and then I'm missing class and I'm exhausted so I don't even get the assignment turned in, And so I think that that's important too, is realizing that you can always approach, always ask is super important. You're going to get help. It may not be, don't go into high expectations. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
It may
expectations
not
get us
be what you
burned,
expect, but you're gonna get help.
but you're going to get help. That's right. And
Yeah.
that's what we want to do. And so that's kind of our tip for today. I think the more you can learn to talk to your professors and get the help that you need, the more important, but you also have to be willing to put in that effort. Professors unlikely to just say, yeah, sure, I'll just hook you up, because there's a trust factor there, because it is a reputation and a name, which I mentioned before. And so that's super important. That's a good tip for today. So, Isabella, I'll just kind of fill in real quick on what our plan is going forward, and feel free to add in. But we're going to be posting once a week or every other week. I can't remember.
Every other week.
Yeah, see, every other week. See, I already messed up.
Every
Every other week, we'll be posting a podcast, and we'll be talking about some aspect as it pertains to your success, picking a major, navigating the career field, navigating your mental health. We're just going to talk college topics, but what we really would like to do is to have you as listeners involved in this. Isabella, do you want to talk about how they can do that?
Yeah. So we're gonna be putting out surveys, and also, if you don't want to do the survey for whatever reason, you can always just comment below on anything that you would want to hear, or any questions that you might have that you still don't feel as confident to ask one of your professors. Or right now you're in summer, so it's like, who do I ask? But I've had this question for years. You have a professor right here, and you have a student that went through it. So you can ask us any questions that you have. You can tell us about topics that you genuinely want to listen to and you want to hear about and you want it to be discussed. And I think what's also very important with this is that you get to have that conversation and you get to have us talking about those topics without that formality or that like anxiousness that comes with like how you should be talking to a professor, or like that relationship that you have to keep, because while we are professional, professional, like we still can talk. We're
We
very
talk it
blunt,
real.
both
We
of
keep
us.
it real.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
very blunt with everything. Like when I came up to her, I was like, "Listen, I'm lost." It was like, "I can see how I can help you." Like we're very non-traditional in that sense, so that can help you to just be like, "Listen, I have this question. I've had it for years, and we can talk about it, and we can give you tips." And I think that's really, really important. And I wish I had that where I could have just tuned into something and be like, okay, like I'm lost here. Please help me with this. Because also, if I hadn't found you and like come out to you with like, please help me, I wouldn't have found that anywhere. And I don't know where because my other connections had nothing to do with what I was studying.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, anything you have, feedback, questions, we're gonna have surveys, so in case that you don't have a question, just to hear back from what you liked, what you don't like, what you're interested in, that's gonna be an option for you. And honestly, if you are a student and you're listening to this, I would take so much advantage if I were you, because I really wish I had it. And just ask anything, and no question is a stupid question.
That's right.
You mentioned that in class a lot, and I think that's super important because it really isn't. Like, whatever you need
So
help,
true.
just
And if
ask.
you're asking the question, somebody else already has it. I mean, that's the
Yeah,
truth, right? The
probably.
questions that like really freak you out, like, I'm not going to ask that. There's like
Yeah,
20 other students that want to ask that same question.
yeah,
So just
totally.
ask it, right? No, that's super important. And so you can, as Isabella said, you can put it in the comments below, topics or things you want us to talk about or concerns or issues that it's really like anything goes pretty much.
Yeah,
I am so open to providing whatever guidance I can, providing tips. We're super excited to be able to do this for you. Of course, I have connections on the professional side, and so we'll be having some guest speakers. Isabella has. We have some more students that are going to come on. So hopefully, it's going to be like super fun and
yeah,
just a wealth of information, but just a platform to where you can voice your concerns. You can get some assistance, get put in the right direction of where you need to be. Um, but then also, of course, my passion is mentally reducing the anxiety that you have over college decisions, curriculum, even studying, that messes with our
yeah,
heads. But then also for those of you that are going into the social sciences, helping professions, my heart is just there, right? Like there is a mental preparation that has to take place. And so if you're a senior and you have not taken the time to mentally prepare for the occupation that you're going into, you need to soak up every bit of
yeah,
what we're going to talk about in regards to mental health because I paint a real picture and you'll learn that. You already said it. I'm very real. So I'm going to tell you how it is, right? And help provide you with the tools that you need to be super successful in your field. Um, so they'll be looking, I'm so like dumb as we all know when it comes to like social media and stuff. So the survey will be posted where?
we're gonna put it
The
under the
link to the,
video.
yeah.
We're gonna put the link, and then again, you can comment anything you want to comment under questions, anything like that.
Yeah.
We're also gonna have an Instagram page, which will link it as well, so you can follow us. And there also you can just send a DM if you don't want to comment. For everyone to see, you can message us, and we'll see them, and we'll respond, and we'll talk about it. So yeah, there's also the website.
Yeah. So before I mention the website, let me say this real quick. I just dawned on me that I never said this. So some people, you might be listening to this and you're already in your profession and you're getting your
Oh,
degree, right? So a lot of people are already in, especially like law enforcement. A lot of people go into law enforcement in states where they don't have to have a degree to go into it, and then they're able to get their degree. I just want to make it really clear that although, Issa is a senior, and so she's currently in school, any topic you want to talk about, we'll talk about. So if you're already in the field and you're an adult, so you're a non-traditional student, use me,
yeah,
like I have worked for thousands of men and women, including people that taught for me, who are going back to school for their graduate degree. Some people completing their undergraduate degree that I worked with. And so I have a whole set of tips for you guys too. So this is not a exclusive club in terms of our series. Like anybody anybody who is struggling within the social sciences, the helping professions, emergency services, doesn't matter where you are in college. I don't care if you're getting your associate, bachelor's, master's, PhD, JD, it doesn't matter. We can cover it all for sure. And so I just want to throw that out there. So as I mentioned earlier, I run a nonprofit called Riptide Resiliency and Empowerment Center here in Southeast Florida. That is who Isa is employed with as an intern, She volunteers as an intern. No payment, right? But we would love for you to hop on our website. We're going to have our resources there because this is one vein of what we do. We prepare those going into the helping professions, emergency services, social sciences. So if you go to our website at www.riptiderec.org, you can find some more information and a landing page there. Also, you can follow us on social media at Stronger Than the Current. We'll be posting this in the comments. You can see it. You can go on there, and then we'll also have a separate social media handle specifically. So if you just want to go on there, you can do that. So the best way to support us and to promote us is to share us on social media, right? Is that the best way, Isa?
Yeah, share it to your friends. Tell them you found this cool podcast from a student and her professor. Just share. Also interact with us. Like, it is really important that you tell us what it is you want to hear, what questions you have. We're mainly doing this because we think it's helpful for you guys. So we don't want to talk about topics that you don't care about.
Right.
So
Right.
really, like, genuinely write any concerns, any thoughts, any questions, and email it. Maybe you don't need the help, but you have a friend who maybe told you once that she felt a little lost, he felt a little lost. Send it to her, them, whatever. And yeah, just promote us.
Yeah, that's awesome. So coming
Yeah.
up on our next podcast, so that'll be episode 2. This one is obviously posted now, so that'll be 2 weeks from now, and we'll make sure to remind you of that. We are hoping to do a topic that is being sent in from you guys. So we're going to be looking at those comments. We're going to be looking at surveys. We'll be going over those, and we're hoping it's a listener-driven podcast for that second episode. So that's what we're hoping for. So got to engage in order to get that, right?
Yes. Please
Awesome.
do.
Well, yeah. Awesome. Well, we're glad that you guys are here with us and you're listening. We hope that we bring value to you. I know that we will.
Yeah,
We will.
for sure.
It'll be super cool. And so I'm looking forward to, I feel like I'm like a rented professor right now. Like, I feel like everybody right now can just rent me because you can just ask whatever questions you want, right? I'm a volunteer professor is what I am right now.
Take advantage.
Yeah, and I'm excited to do that. You know, the more people that we put into our world that are informed and prepared and have resources and have support and have a network, you know, that helps everybody, you know, and I'm excited to be a part of that. So thank you, Isa, for having the passion to do this and wanting to do this with me. I'm excited. So
No, thank you for telling me to do this.
we will see you guys on our next episode.
Yep.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Illuminating Haze. Join us in 2 weeks as our hosts Isabella and Dr. Kara Hill bring another important topic to guide your future.